A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the news at 12 on Dominion Television. I am Pat Ito. The Joint Admission and Matriculation Board has begun the rescheduling of the over 379,000 affected candidates for another Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination. The rescheduling began today after the registrar of the examination body, Professor Isaac Oloyede, made it known in a press briefing in Abuja. Oloyede admitted errors in the just concluded examination affecting over 260,000 in 65 centers were affected in Lagos and 92 centers in Owerri zone comprising of over 173 candidates in 5 states of the Southeast. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) has removed a foreign national, Ilia Beta, from the wanted list for crypto bridge exchange Cybex fraud. The anti-graft agency out on the 30th of April declared Beta wanted over the alleged fraud perpetrated on the Cybex trading platform. However, in a statement issued by FCC spokesperson Dele Oyawale said that Beta's name has been removed from the wanted list. The federal government has reaffirmed its commitment to improving internal security and enhancing grassroots policing with the inauguration of a state-of-the-art smart police station in Kantepe, Abuja. The facility, constructed by the Nigeria Police Trust Fund and officially handed over to the Nigeria Police Force, is designed to improve operational efficiency and foster a stronger police-community relations within the Federal Capital Territory. Additional smart police stations are expected to be commissioned in Kogi, Enugu, and other parts of the country in the coming days. And on the foreign scene, a Mauritanian appeal court has sentenced former President Mohamed Abdelaziz to 15 years in prison and imposed a $3 million fine, escalating a previous 5-year sentence handed down in 2023 for corrupt charges. Aziz, a former military general who rose to power through 2 coups before serving as president from 2009 to 2019, was found guilty of money laundering and illicit self-enrichment. Investigators say he amassed over $70 million in assets during his decade in office, and he has remained in custody since his initial conviction last year. Aziz's legal team has dismissed the charges as politically motivated, alleging they stem from a falling out with his successor, President Mohamed Sheikh Ghazouani. Away from Mauritania to United States, where Donald Trump has said that the United States was getting very close to securing a nuclear deal with Iran and Tehran and agreed to the terms. An Iranian source familiar with the negotiations said that there will still be gaps to bridge in the talks with the United States. Fresh talks between Iranian and U.S. negotiators to resolve dispute over Tehran's nuclear program ended in Oman on Sunday, with further negotiations planned as Tehran publicly insisted on continuing its uranium enrichment. And to India, the Indian Army said that at least 10 militants were killed in an operation still underway in the troubled northeastern state of Nepal, bordering Myanmar. The army discussed in a post on X saying 10 cadres were neutralized and a sizable quantity of arms and ammunition have been recovered. The death came months after Indian militant group that sought refuge in Myanmar and fought in its civil war had begun streaming back across the border to Manipur. And in sports, Super Eagles striker Victor Osimhen has broken 2 records after helping Galatasaray to win the Turkish Cup. The 26-year-old scored 2 goals at Galatasaray, won 3-0 against Trabzonspor in Turkish club final. Osimhen is now the club's all-time record highest goal scorer by a foreign football player in a season. Always know that you can visit our website at www.dominion.org.ng to watch us live and interact with us. You can also follow us across our social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn at Dominion Broadcast and X at Dominioncast. And that was the news at 1 on Dominion Television. Thank you so much for watching. I am Pat Ito. Good afternoon.
Ẹ káàsán o, ìròyìn àgbáyé ló ń dé sétí ìgbọ̀yìn láti iléeṣẹ́ móhùnmáwòrán Dominion tá kalẹ̀ ságbègbè Ìyàgànkú nìbàdàn. Àbọ́ládé Sodiq Abíọ́lá lórúkọ mi. Àjọ tó mójútó ìdánwò àṣewọlé láwọn ilé ẹ̀kọ́ gíga ilẹ̀ wa Nàìjíríà JAMB ti kéde pé àtúnṣe ìdánwò ọ̀hún yóò wáyé o fún àwọn akópa èyí tí wọ́n tó bí 1,400 379,000 tí ségesège ẹ̀rọ ayárabíàṣá palára níbi ìjókòó àkọ́kọ́ ìdánwò náà tó wáyé. Alága àjọ JAMB ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n Isiaq Olóyèdè ló sọ̀rọ̀ yìí di mímọ̀ lánàá fún àwọn oníròyìn níbi ìpàdé oníròyìn tó wáyé nílùú Àbújá. Ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n Olóyèdè jẹ́ di mímọ̀ wípé lóòótọ́ ni àjọ JAMB ṣe àṣìṣe nínú ìjókòó àkọ́kọ́ ìdánwò ọ̀hún pẹ̀lú bí àwọn ibùba ìdánwò tó tó bí 665 200,000 665 bí wọ́n ṣe ní akùdé ní ìpínlẹ̀ Èkó tí àwọn ibùba míì tó tó bí 92,000 náà sì tún ní àbùkù ní ìlú Òwèrì débi wípé àwọn akópa tó tó bí 171,000 òun náà ni ọ̀rọ̀ ọ̀hún pa lára láwọn ìpínlẹ̀ 5 tí ń bẹ lápá ìlà oòrùn gúúsù ilẹ̀ wa Nàìjíríà. Àjọ amúnimọ̀dá tó ń gbógun ti ìwà àbàjẹ́ nílẹ̀ yìí EFCC ti ṣàlàyé pé ọmọlẹ̀ òkèèrè kan torúkọ rẹ̀ ń jẹ́ Elibita kò sí lára àwọn ọ̀daràn táwọn ń wá o wípé wọ́n lọ́wọ́ nínú ilé iṣẹ́ alùjìbìtì ojú òpó ayélujára sógúndogójì CBEX èyí tó gbé owó àwọn èèyàn fògànà lórílẹ̀‐èdè yìí. Ẹni tí í ṣe agbẹnusọ àjọ EFCC nílẹ̀ wa Nàìjíríà ni ló fi ọ̀rọ̀ ń léde lójú òpó ti X láyà òní. Délé Oyèwálé tí í ṣe agbẹnusọ fún àjọ EFCC jó di mímọ̀ wípé kò sí orúkọ Bítà lára àwọn orúkọ àwọn ọ̀bàyéjẹ́ eléyìí tí táwọn wà o wípé wọ́n lu àwọn èèyàn ní jìbìtì pẹ̀lú iléeṣẹ́ CBEX. Ìjọba àpapọ̀ ilẹ̀ wa Nàìjíríà ti tẹ pẹpẹ mọ́ ìpinnu rẹ̀ láti jẹ́ kí ètò ààbò tó rú gọ́gọ́ lábẹ́lé àti ní ẹsẹ̀ kùkú nílẹ̀ yìí pẹ̀lú bí wọ́n ti ṣe ìfilọ́lẹ̀ iléeṣẹ́ ọlọ́pàá ìgbàlódé tí ó máa lo agbára ẹ̀rọ tuntun ní agbègbè Katampe nílùú Àbújá ti ṣe olú ìlú ilẹ̀ yìí. Iléeṣẹ́ ọlọ́pàá tí ó máa ṣe àmúlò agbára ẹ̀rọ tuntun ọ̀hún ó ní àjọ tó ń mójútó ètò ìṣúná iléeṣẹ́ ọlọ́pàá ilẹ̀ yìí gbé kalẹ̀ tí wọ́n sì jọ̀wọ́ rẹ̀ fún iléeṣẹ́ ọlọ́pàá lórílẹ̀‐èdè yìí lánàá òde yìí. Iléeṣẹ́ náà ni wọ́n pé yóò jẹ́ kí okùn ètò ààbò túbọ̀ gbópọn dáadáa láwọn ẹsẹ̀ kùkú àti agbègbè gbogbo tí ń bẹ ní tìbútòrò ìlú Àbújá. Wọ́n wá fi kún pé ó kù báyìí ní ìbọn ró torí pé irúfẹ́ iléeṣẹ́ ọlọ́pàá tí ń lo agbára ìmọ̀ ẹ̀rọ tuntun ọ̀hún iná ni wọ́n tún ṣe ìdásílẹ̀ sí ìpínlẹ̀ Kogi, ìpínlẹ̀ Enugu àti àwọn ìpínlẹ̀ míì láàrin ọjọ́ péréte sí àkókò tá a wà yìí lórílẹ̀‐èdè wa Nàìjíríà. Ẹ̀wẹ̀ láti ilẹ̀ òkèèrè lọ́hùn-ún ilé-ẹjọ́ kòtẹ́milọ́rùn lórílẹ̀‐èdè Mauritania ti dájọ́ ẹ̀wọ̀n ọdún 15 gbáko fún ààrẹ tẹ́lẹ̀ lórílẹ̀‐èdè ọ̀hún Mohamed Ould Abdelaziz ó ní wọ́n tún pé yóò tún san owó ìtanilójì mílíọ̀nù $3 lórí ẹ̀sùn ìwà àbàjẹ́ eléyìí tí wọ́n fi kàn án. Ìdájọ́ ẹ̀wọ̀n ọdún 15 ló tún kún ìfìyàjẹni ọlọ́dún 5 èyí tí wọ́n ti kọ́ ṣe ìdájọ́ rẹ̀ fún tẹ́lẹ̀ lọ́dún 2023 lórí ìwà àbàjẹ́ ọ̀kan òjọ̀kan. Àsísì tó fìgbà kan rí jẹ́ ààrẹ apàṣẹwàá àti ọ̀gágun iléeṣẹ́ ọmọ ogun orílẹ̀-èdè ọ̀hún ni wọ́n pé ìgbà méjì ọ̀tọ̀ọ̀tọ̀ ló ti dipò ààrẹ mú látara ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ ìdìtẹ̀gbàjọba méjì èyí tó wáyé lórílẹ̀-èdè ọ̀hún láàrin ọdún 2009 sí ọdún 2019 ló fi dipò ààrẹ mú lórílẹ̀-èdè náà. Àmọ́ tó ṣe wípé gẹ́lẹ́ tó kù lóróyè ni wọ́n ti fi ẹ̀sùn fífi ẹ̀yìn pọn owó ìlú àti kíkó ọlá kó ọlà jọ lọ́nà tí ò tọ́ kàn án. Àwọn olùṣèwádìí èyí tí wọ́n fi ẹ̀sùn ọ̀hún kàn wọ́n jó di mímọ̀ wípé àwọn dúkìá tó wọ́n tó mílíọ̀nù lọ́nà $70 $70 million lónìkan kó jọ lákòókò tó fi wà ní ọ́fíìsì ààrẹ lórílẹ̀‐èdè ọ̀hún. Ní báyìí ó ti wá wà látìmọ́ láti ọdún tó kọjá kó tó di wípé wọ́n dájọ́ ẹ̀wọ̀n ọdún 15 gbáko fún un. Àwọn agbẹjọ́rò rẹ̀ nínú àlàyé tí wọ́n ṣe fún àwọn oníròyìn wọ́n jẹ́ kó di mímọ̀ wípé ìdájọ́ náà ní ọwọ́ òṣèlú nínú o pẹ̀lú bí èdè àìyedè àti dúkù ṣe wà láàrin òun àti ààrẹ tí ń bẹ lóróyè lákòókò tá a wà yìí eyín ààrẹ Mohammed Wuchik Gozani. Ààrẹ ilẹ̀ Amẹ́ríkà Donald Trump ni ló ti ṣàlàyé pé àdéhùn àsọyépọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ yóò wáyé ní kòpẹ́kòpẹ́ o láàrin àwọn aláṣẹ ìlú Washington DC tí ṣe olú ìlú ilẹ̀ Amẹ́ríkà àti àwọn aláṣẹ ìlú Tehran tí ṣe olú ìlú orílẹ̀-èdè Iran láti mú òpin bá ṣíṣe àyẹ̀wò àdó olóró alátọ̀ọ̀mù àpayírẹ́ èyí tí ìlú Iran tí wọ́n ń gbèrò láti gbé jáde ní kòpẹ́kòpẹ́ yìí. Ṣùgbọ́n ṣá o àwọn èèyàn tí wọ́n jẹ́ etí ọba ńlé etí ọba lóko tí wọ́n súnmọ́ ìjọba orílẹ̀-èdè Iran wọ́n jó di mímọ̀ wípé àwọn àlàfo kan sì ń bẹ ò tí ilẹ̀ Amẹ́ríkà àti Iran ò tí ì dí nínú àsọyépọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ èyí tó wáyé láàrin wọn. Ọjọ́ àìkú Sunday ni wọ́n fẹnu ọ̀rọ̀ jóná nílùú Oman níbi tí àwọn aṣojú ilẹ̀ Amẹ́ríkà àti aṣojú orílẹ̀-èdè Iran ti ṣèpàdé fún ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ wákàtí. Àmọ́ ṣá ìrètí wà wípé láìpẹ́ láì jìnnà wọ́n tún tẹ̀síwájú lórí ìpàdé ọ̀hún kí wọ́n lè tètè fi ìgbànúkòóso sí ọjà kí wọ́n lè mọ odó tí wọ́n dọ̀rùn ńlá sí gan láti mú ìdádúró bá ìgbìyànjú àwọn aláṣẹ ìlú Tehran tí ṣe lùlù Iran láti má ṣe àyẹ̀wò àdó olóró alátọ̀ọ̀mù àpàyérẹ́ eléyìí tí wọ́n dúnkokò pé àwọn yóò ṣe ní kòpẹ́kòpẹ́ yìí. Ẹ̀wẹ̀ iléeṣẹ́ ọmọ ogun orílẹ̀-èdè India ti ṣàlàyé pé kò dín ní àwọn ajìjàgbara 10 tí wọ́n gbẹ̀mímì tí wọ́n ṣubú lójú ìjà níbi ìkọlù kan eléyìí tó wáyé ní ìlú Manipur èyí tí ń bẹ lápá ìlà oòrùn àríwá orílẹ̀-èdè India tó tún jẹ́ alámúlétì orílẹ̀-èdè Myanmar. Ìròyìn fìdí ẹ̀ múlẹ̀ pé àwọn ọmọ iléeṣẹ́ ogun orílẹ̀-èdè India fi ìdí ìròyìn ọ̀hún múlẹ̀ lójúpọ̀ ayélujára àti X lónìí. Wọ́n ṣàlàyé wípé àwọn ajìjàgbara tí wọ́n jẹ́ olórí ikọ̀ ọmọ ogun ọ̀hún 10 ó ní wọ́n gba àwọn irinṣẹ́ ìjagun wọn lọ́wọ́ wọn níbi ìkọlù náà. Wọ́n ní bẹ́ẹ̀ sì ní lẹ́yìn oṣù díẹ̀ tí àwọn ajìjàgbara kan tí wọ́n jẹ́ ọmọ bíbí orílẹ̀-èdè India eléyìí tí wọ́n lọ kún wọn lọ́wọ́ nínú ogun abẹ́lé tó wáyé ní ìlú Myanmar ti ń gbìyànjú láti padà sí ìlú Manipur èyí tó jẹ́ ìpínlẹ̀ kan ní orílẹ̀-èdè India ó ní ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ ìṣekúpani ọ̀hún tún wáyé. Lẹ́ka eré ìdárayá ògbóǹtagì ògìdán orí ọ̀dàn àtàmátàṣe agbábọ́ọ̀lù ikọ̀ ẹgbẹ́ agbábọ́ọ̀lù àgbà ọ̀jẹ̀ lẹwa Nàìjíríà Super Eagles Victor Osimhen inú ti pa ìtàn méjì rẹ̀ o pẹ̀lú bó ṣe ṣèrànwọ́ fún ikọ̀ ẹgbẹ́ agbábọ́ọ̀lù tó ń kópa fún lórílẹ̀‐èdè Turkey Galatasaray lákòókò tí wọ́n gbé ewúro sójú ikọ̀ ẹgbẹ́ agbábọ́ọ̀lù Trabzonspor nínú àṣekágbá ìdíje ife ẹ̀yẹ ti orílẹ̀‐èdè Turkey. Victor Osimhen ti ṣe ẹni ọdún 26 ń ló mi góòlù 2 lákòókò tí ikọ̀ ẹgbẹ́ agbábọ́ọ̀lù Galatasaray fi ìyà jẹ ikọ̀ ẹgbẹ́ agbábọ́ọ̀lù Trabzonspor pẹ̀lú àmì ayò 3-0 ní àṣekágbá ìdíje ọ̀hún. Osimhen ló ti wá fi ìtàn lọ́lẹ̀ báyìí o gẹ́gẹ́ bí ọmọlẹ̀ òkèrè èyí tí ó mọ̀ gbá àmì góòlù tó pọ̀ jùlọ wọlé fún ikọ̀ ẹgbẹ́ agbábọ́ọ̀lù Galatasaray ní sáà kan dondo. Ẹ má gbàgbé pé ẹ lè darapọ̀ mọ́ wa láwọn ìkànnì ìbánidọ́rẹ̀ẹ́ ayélujára wa ọ̀kan òjọ̀kan à ń bẹ lójú òpó ayélujára látẹ̀káyé www.dominion.org. Bákan náà lẹ́tún lè máa wò wá tẹ́sì tún máa gbọ́ wa pẹ̀lú lójú òpó ìkànnì ìbánidọ́rẹ̀ẹ́ ojúrẹ̀dà Kìnbá ọ̀dọ́rẹ̀ẹ́ Facebook àtòjú òpó aláwòrán tó ń tò ní fọ́nrán Instagram tó fi mọ́ ìkànnì ìbánidọ́rẹ̀ẹ́ TikTok àtòjú òpó alóhùnláwòrán YouTube àti ìkànnì LinkedIn. Àpèjúwe tẹ́ fi darapọ̀ mọ́ wa láwọn ojú òpó wọ̀nyí ni @DominionCast. Ẹ ṣeun tẹ́ ń wò wá tẹ́ ń gbọ́ wá ìlópin ìròyìn àgbáyé wa fún tòní. Àbọ́ládé Sodiq Abíọ́lá lórúkọ tèmi ó dàbọ̀.
This is where human kidneys are being traded. And it's happening right out in the open.
Back then I was, or maybe even still am, selfish because I wanted that kidney.
If I could go back in time, I would have never agreed to any of this.
They are making money via children like Amon.
For a fact, this is organized crime.
Why has Eldoret in Kenya become an international hotspot for organ trafficking?
There are very powerful people who may be involved. My life could be in danger.
In a months-long investigation with German media organizations Der Spiegel and ZDF, we researched a multi-million organ trafficking network reaching far beyond Kenya's borders and its devastating impact on those affected. This is Amon Kipruto Meli, 22 years old, from a village in western Kenya. He sold his kidney to start a new, better life. But the promises turned out to be false. Like many young Kenyans, he struggled to find steady income, moving from one job to the next, until one day a friend told him about a quick and easy way to earn a lot of money.
He told me selling your kidney was a great deal. I used to refuse over and over again. But then one day I finally agreed to it. Then he put me in contact with them.
Amon was promised $6,000 for his kidney, a lot of money in a country where the average monthly income is only around $500. A middleman took him to Mediheal Hospital in Eldoret, where he was received by a team of Indian doctors, Amon says. But he was still worried about potential health risks.
They did not explain anything to me. The one who had taken me pointed at people around us and said, "Look, they all donated and they are okay. They are even going back to work."
They took blood and tissue tests from Amon. Then he met the person who was supposed to receive his kidney, an elderly Somali woman, Amon says. Then 2 doctors asked him to sign documents in English that he didn't understand.
He asked me how old I was, and when I told him, he said I was too young. Then he said I would still be okay, and there was no problem.
Amon had just turned 22. He had the surgery, and after only a few days of recovery, he says, they paid him less than agreed, $4,000 instead of $6,000, and sent him home. He used the money to buy a phone and a car that soon broke down. Shortly after, he started to feel miserable. He wasn't eating, felt dizzy, and had pains in his lower abdomen.
He fainted, so I decided to rush him to hospital.
There, doctors told her Amon was missing one of his kidneys. She was shocked to learn he had sold it.
They are making money. They are making money through young children like me. They didn't console me. I found only the child when he fainted. That is where I found that he does not have one kidney.
She reported the incident to the police. We will later meet the investigator working on organ trafficking cases in Eldoret. In the town of Oyugis, a 180-kilometer drive away, Willis Okumu has been trying to find out what's behind the rumors of young men selling their kidneys. He's done research for a project implemented by Interpol and spoke with some of these young men.
These guys are preying on vulnerabilities of young people from a poor country, and most of these young people, again, are also one of the most vulnerable within this society.
We meet 4 men who claim to have gone through a similar process like Amon. They say they too have sold their kidneys at Mediheal Hospital in the past 3 years. They also claim no health risks were explained to them before surgery. They also believe the promise of a better life.
I went there because I had a dream of building a house, and I thought I could get a job to sustain me.
They were only paid $2,000 each, they say. Kennedy bought a motorbike on credit, but soon he couldn't pay the loan and the creditors took it away. They all say recruiters working with Mediheal offered them a $400 commission for each donor they recruit. One of them recruited 2 people, he says, but stopped after.
It's a way to exploit people. It is just some people getting rich. There is no benefit from it at all because you are given only very little money.
How come this has been going on for years, seemingly undisturbed?
There's a legal gray area that this syndicate is exploiting. So because there's no law that prevents you from actually donating your kidney for money, and you cannot be prosecuted for that. The police, we asked people at Transnational Organized Crime Unit at the DCI, and they told us that, we can't actually prosecute these guys, we can't even arrest them, because the law is silent on this.
What is allowed, though, according to Kenyan law, is organ donations to relatives or for altruistic reasons. Many of those who sold their kidneys, Willis Okumu says, have developed depression and alcoholism because they couldn't fulfill their dreams, or they had to cut back on work because of persistent health problems.
I don't think it takes a lot of knowledge to know that this guy is not going to live for long, because they're not eating well, and they already have 1 kidney, and they're into alcohol. I don't think they're going to reach 60. For a fact, this is organized crime.
We want to understand how the system operates and managed to speak with a former long-term employee of Mediheal Hospital. The buying and selling of transplants started many years ago, he says. First with Kenyan donors and Somali recipients. Then, starting in 2022, recipients came from Israel and, as of last year, Germany. Many of the donors of these well-paying customers are flown in from Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, or Pakistan. Our source tells us donors had to sign documents stating they were not being paid and they were relatives to recipients they have never met.
Because of the language barrier, they just signed. Some of them, they weren't even old enough. They were below the age.
For kidney recipients, there was no cut-off age, no risk too high, he says. The oldest was 102 years old, he recalls.
At Mediheal, there's a surgeon who is just after money. No matter how old you are, he'll do the transplant.
He tells us one recipient even died during surgery, and the body had to be flown to their home country. Another with pre-existing conditions barely made it out alive, he claims. Ever since the switch from Somali recipients to Israelis and Germans,